Good evening, everyone. It's a full house. I love full houses. Welcome to the Fine Arts Work Center. Thank you for joining us tonight for the first FAWC Friday event of the 2025-2026 season. We appreciate you for being here tonight. My name is Terry Q. I'm the Fellowship Director here at the Work Center, where since 1968, artists and writers from across the US and around the world have convened to pursue artistic freedom, to connect with one another, and make work that has gone on to influence the larger culture. If you're joining us for the first time, FAWC Friday events take place during the residency period of our annual 7-month fellowship program, and on the first Friday of the month between now and February. It'll take place on the second Friday in January. And it features music, hands-on art making, readings, artist talks, community meals, and open studios. We hope that you will visit us throughout the season at these special events for conversation, inspiration, and to celebrate art. I hope you've all had a chance to enjoy tonight's food from our local Rosie's Cantina. And a shout out, yes. And a shout out to DJ J Boom for getting the vibes right. Tonight we are going to hear from two wonderful visiting artists and former FAWC fellows, poet Samyak Shertok and visual artist Kristy Hughes. Thank you both for accepting our invitation to share your work with our community. Following their presentations, Samyak and Kristy will participate in a Q&A with the audience. We have copies of Samyak's award-winning book in the back, No Rhododendron, which is available for sale, and he's happy to sign and personalize those for you. Tonight, we also celebrate the opening of the exhibition Turgid Umbo by former FAWC Fellow and 2025 Stephen Pace Artist in Residence, Jeff Gibbons. Yep. Where is Jeff? Jeff, where are you? There he is. He's back there. How about another round of applause for Jeff? Turgid Umbo, an exploration of moments of tension and transformation through comedy and solemn self-reflection, will be on view in the Hudson Walker Gallery through November 17th. Once we're done here, there's more in store for the evening. Across the courtyard, artist and print shop manager Vicky Tomeko will activate the print shop with some fun, hands-on art-making activities. And lastly, a selection of current fellows have opened their studios this evening to show you what they've been working on. Studios 1, 7, 8, 10, and 12. They have a colorful banner above them, which means they are open to explore, so please go check them out. I want to take a moment to thank the Mass Cultural Council, Provincetown Tourism Fund, and Arts Foundation Cape Cod, who are among many generous institutional partners who help make FAWC Friday community events possible. And a huge thank you as well to the many individuals who also help FAWC make our work possible. If you enjoy our free arts and culture events, I hope you will consider making a contribution so we can continue to care for forthcoming generations of artists and writers. A few final housekeeping items before we get started. There are 2 restrooms and a water fountain on your left, my right, down that hallway. We have assisted listening devices and cushions for chairs at the back. And finally, please remember to turn off your cell phones. Now it is my pleasure to introduce and welcome to the stage our first presenter of the evening. Samyak Shertok is a poet and author of the debut poetry collection, No Rhododendron, winner of the 2024 Donald Hall Prize for Poetry, and published just last month with the University of Pittsburgh Press. In her judge's citation for the prize, acclaimed poet Kimiko Han calls No Rhododendron an elegant and sophisticated collection full of hybridity in form and subject, an absolute marvel. She praises Samyak's inventive blending of poetic traditions, from the ghazal and haibun to hybrid forms of his own making, as he explores language, home, diaspora, and survival with great depth and imagination. Paisley Regdahl describes the collection as a gorgeous, formally innovative collection that grapples with loss, of a father to illness, of a homeland to war and exile, and of a mother whose identity holds the final memory of home. She notes that these poems do not merely praise or lament, but consciously examine what it means to be unable to lament, resisting closure and reminding us that the elegiac imagination can never fully reproduce or preserve the identities of the dead. Regdahl calls it a fantastic first collection, and I agree. A finalist for the National Poetry Series, the Alice James Award, and the Jake Adam York Prize, Samyak has received fellowships from the Aspen Words, the Helene Wurlitzer Foundation, and of course, the Fine Arts Work Center. His work has earned the Robert and Adele Schiff Award for Poetry, the Gulf Coast Prize in Poetry, and the Auburn Witness Poetry Prize. And his poems have appeared in the Cincinnati Review, the Gettysburg Review, the Iowa Review, the Kenyon Review, and many other journals. Originally from Nepal, Samyak now serves as an assistant professor of English at Mississippi State University, where he started teaching this fall. He's traveled all the way from Mississippi to be here with us tonight. Samyak, welcome back to FAWC and P-Town. The stage is yours.
As long as it works, right? Good evening. Can you hear me? Fantastic. Theory has told me technically I have 30 minutes, but no one takes 30 minutes, so he told me to take 25. So I'm gonna time myself so that we can also get to Kristy's amazing presentation. So as long as I remember to check the time. Thank you, Thierry, for the wonderful introduction and welcoming me back. Thank you, FAWC. Thank you, Sharon. Devin, who has been coordinating the event. Of course, Naya, Vicky, and I just met Daisy, who is already done a fantastic display back there. I was so impressed already. So regardless of whether any book gets sold or not, I was like, this is it. This is my, this is all I asked for this evening. Thank you, all the artists and writers who are here, and thank you all the lovers of art who make space like this possible and who make us possible. I first came here in 2018 for a summer workshop with Ada Limon, and I found this place just magical. I fell in love. And then I was lucky enough to come back in 2021, 2022 as for the residency, and I'm now here back for this event, and the dream still feels like a dream. So thank you very much. I want to begin with a poem about my mother tongue, which is where all poetry for me begins. My mother tongue, Tamang, literally translates as horse ghost. It's an oral tongue. So part of the challenge for me and the book was, how do you write about a language that has no script? Mother tongue, a haunting. In my dream, the horse ghost always speaks in my mother tongue. Ta horse, ta root, mang ghost, mang dream. I grew up wearing only the hand-me-down ghosts. I have never ridden a horse once. I sat on a moving horse. When the tender, broken thunder broke into a gallop, I spoke in tongue. In the dream, I'm always late to the buckwheat stubble burning, fugitive in a native negative, which is only mine, a landfill field. Horses. Where did all the horses go? In Tamang, breath, motherland, and teeth come from the same root. Motherless, have you made your mother tongue? Asks the horse ghost. Today, I dream only in Tamang. Today, I speak only to Ama. Stop writing about me. I'm not a ghost yet. Ama scolds me in a ghost tongue. If to speak one's mother tongue is to keep one's mother alive, I kill my mother daily. Fluent ghost, look how fluently I spit in my step tongue. Untongue me, mother, I speak. And the horse ghost writes my lines. Don't forget to give water, mother shouts from the other shore, to the horses before you leave. When the horses birth my motherland, the vultures, there is no way to say this in English. The horse sleeps under my tongue like a mother. My ghost, my tongue, my horse, my mother, my always a dream. I'm here to tell you, it was not a dream. Once I saw a ghost, half horse, whole mother, teeth and teeth, pear blossoms. Horses have risen, mother, speak. Thank you. I'm never fast enough to grab drink when folks are clapping, and it becomes so awkward because like, you know, y'all can't look away, and I have to drink, and suddenly, yeah. So speaking of feast, since we just feasted, I thought I would read a poem about the other side or the same side of feast, hunger. A brief history of hunger. The sky, snake root smoke and rasping, a terrible light swallowed the village. Up close, monsters of dirt without number, their wings sickled and shining, fairies rapacious red. They sheathed the cedars and barley fields ash yellow. Soon we could see neither land nor sky. We bolted the windows. The teeth of the wind kept us quiet in the dark. At dawn, we discovered they could not open their wings soon enough. The village was unleashed upon them. In burlap sacks, fishing nets, amphoras, wading shawls, we gathered the unblessed harvest like dowries. We poured them into the boiling pot, plucked their devil heads, their faces so like our amas, and wings and legs into a pile of dinner for the cats and stray dogs and crows. We fried what remained in burned ghee until they crunched between our teeth. We ate them, each one now the size of a girl's finger dipped in wild honey. We smoked them in bamboo skewers for the tree bone season. Where did they come from? Where were they going? They knew only hunger. They ravaged the leaves as though they had to pass through all the green on the land to get to the other side. But we too knew hunger. If we waited for the gods come winter, we would be hurling our lambs and newborns into the same ravine. So we spared no needle, no blade, no sky, no angel. Akhes prophesied they would return after 12 years, but we never saw them again. That summer, we turned famine into feast. For 9 days, we ate nothing but what had come to eat us. That hunger lives in our blood now, and our children's and their children's, and it will not stop until the last green is cut. Thank you. So I'm gonna try to do something scary, which is there's a section which is a sonnet sequence, which is an elegy for my father. The max I've read is like 4 sonnets from that sequence, but since this is a magical place, I thought I would try to read 6. And it's a sequence, and the last line of each sonnet sort of makes way for the first line of the next sonnet. So I'll be jumping around, but what I'm going to do is read 3 pairs, so at least you can hear sort of one sonnet leading to next, but I'll be jumping in between. And on the page, these sonnets are inverted. And they were not inverted at first, but these are sonnets from my father, and he was a devout Buddhist. And I thought, in honor of the ancient Himalayan sky burial, where those of you who know about it, after someone passes, they return the body back to the elements through the carrion birds, particularly vultures. So I thought, what would it mean for the words and the lines to be offered upward? Ideally, I would like each sonnet to be read both ways, and I've read both ways in drafting and revising many, many times. But for tonight, I'll read the first one both ways, but after that, I'll just read one way for the rest, because otherwise we'll be here all night. A sky burial, sonnets to be read from the earth to the sky, and each is numbered X. X. Enough, but what is there to say to whom? Weigh the tears I won't shed soon. Someone asks from the naked dark, keen eyes 5 winters ago, won't you say something? Time you held my hand on the way to the terminal. Don't touch the body, a voice reminds me, the last into song. I look at your skies splayed on linen. But what can I offer? I have no hands to gather salt. Harder, I want to keep you a little longer. You'll make the dead linger, she cries beads. No more Nana, her sister's coo. Somewhere behind me, Amma breaks her prayer. Feathers crushed to black salt. I feel nothing. I kneel beside your bed. I see a crow. I kneel beside your bed. I see a crow. Feathers crushed to black salt. I feel nothing. Somewhere behind me, Amma breaks her prayer beads. No more Nana, her sister's coo. She cries harder. I want to keep you a little longer, but what can I offer? I have no hands to gather salt into song. I look at skies splayed on linen. Don't touch the body, a voice reminds me. The last time you held my hand on the way to the terminal 5 winters ago. Won't you say something? Someone asks from the naked dark. Keen eyes weigh the tears I won't shed soon enough. But what is there to say? To whom? There is so much to say, but who can hear us speak through a barbed wire? In this country, a report can take 5 monsoons to arrive. I lie half awake in my childhood bed, the night here a moon too early. The longest nap in the whole trip, 1 hour, yet sleep won't come. I wrap myself in the quilt and go to the rooftop, still unfinished. Cut kite strings tangled with the power lines, the Trivandrum airport. We used to gather here in summer nights to view the light-wound Bodhanath. Ancestors, Amma would say, pointing at the sky thick with stars, tonight not a single plane lands or takes off. The aerodrome beacon sweeps the leaden skies again and again, finding nothing. X. In the lab, the nurse told me to hold Appa still against the X-ray machine plate. He could barely stand from the wheelchair, exhaling rapidly through his mouth. I did not last even a minute. I asked Amma to take my place and hurried out of the room. This was not my Appa, the husk of the spirit I once knew, blood undone. Your own son, no? Outside, I heard the technician ask, if you forget the boy, to forgive the man. If you forgive the man, to forget the boy. Is it possible our whole life is a single choice, fractured, then reassembled? I waited for Amma to say, no, just a distant relative we barely know. Instead, I heard the machinery's rehearsed whir. A stir by the spring, Prince Dashratha unleashed an arrow. When he went to claim his kill, he found a young man kneeling, his back a shaft pierced well. Shravan Kumar was taking his blind parents on a pilgrimage, one hand still on the pitcher. Take this to my parents waiting beneath the peepal tree, Kumar said with his last breath. The prince unknotted the still warm grip on the jug, filled it with clean dark water. When he handed the thirst kill to Kumar's parents, they asked, where's our child? The prince said, first drink it, but they would not touch the blood water, and died beneath the faded tree. A shrine lies where Kumar fell. If you pour water into the stone navel, you can never fill up the hole. X. Say you begged the crow to let you hold him one last time. Say he was waiting for you. There is more than truth at stake here. Truth is a pair of boots bereft of a father. Truth is staying rooted in the house for a week so as not to miss your son's long distance. Truth is, love is an arrowhead sharpened by wound. At the hospital, I looked at Appa and a word filled my mouth, crow. As in, the bird didn't want to be inside my mouth but had nowhere else to go. As in, if I said a word, I would crush the bird between my teeth. Is reimagination also a betrayal? Repent, pain again. If you did not feel the pain the first time, can you never repent? X. If grief is a hunger that grows by feeding on itself. If grief is, like love, never ours alone, what right do I have to spend our secrets? To remember is to forsake twice. In this line, I again fail to keep you alive. If I'm half you, half of me is the crow's cursed flight. Half of you is still caught in Maya. One night, a great weight pinned me motionless. I awoke to find my right hand strangling my left wrist. What if it's the departed who don't want us to leave them alone? Anna's hummingbirds feed on ash for minerals. In these malignant rhymes, I can get close to you without the terror of touching your cheek. Show me how not to write the last line. So that's the sonnet. We survived. You all doing okay? I just checked my time. I'm still doing okay, if you all are doing okay. Let's see. Thought I would read you a ghazal. want a ghazal or something else? Now I'm suddenly revisiting my own real-time thinking. Maybe I'll read a ghazanalet, which is a hybrid of the sonnet, ghazal, and villanelle. I always joke that this is the reason Kimiko Han picked the book, because this combines three forms. And partly, I must say, I think I did not set out, to combine forms or invent forms, but as in the process, they just happened, and I realized it was partly because I kind of have really sort of hybrid life. I have, as in, I feel like I've lived many lives, and many languages, many cultures, so I think that's kind of naturally, organically became this. And this one, in content-wise, it also sort of tries to weave together the concept of sky burial and Icarus. How to sky bury your fatherland, a ghazanalet. Appa hands him a bodhi seed. Never look back, forget this country. He swallows it. For every boy he thinks there is a sky falling. Skyborn, below the silo emptied for his feathers, prophecy of the one-winged Dafe, a voice half red, half crowned, keeps falling, keeps failing a revolution of, but not for his sisters, in the mouth of the Kali. Is the river ravenous, he wonders, or are the golden jackals falling? In the eye of the cyclone, Arjun-eyed, but today he can only look back, hear the wheat sheaves heave in the wind, Appa's hands filling with plump kernels. What new moon can recompense an uprooted story? Farther he flies, cleaner, he hears the seed music. Not every falling boy is a myth. Some gods live just to hurl boys into the sea. In the exile light, he sees a newborn republic fleeing itself like an effigy into the fire. He will have to sky bury the boy, Appa plucking a bone, the vultures flaying a share for his fatherland. For every sky, there is a boy falling. Might just have time for two more, so I want to obviously read a poem about my mom, right? Thank you, yeah. It's a prose poem, and this one's set in Salt Lake City. Dear Mouth of the Horse Ghost, April, Salt Lake City. I woke up to the snow again. I couldn't tell how long it had been snowing, backyard sheathed with powder breath. I feared for the apricot blossoms. In the living room, I parted the curtains. The hawthorn in the front yard was hacked open. Under the weight of the snow-laden branches, half the tree had buckled, blocking the entrance to the house and the next door church's driveway. Poor guy, I texted my landlord along with a picture. Passerines flung themselves into the inverted sky, perched on the live wire. A squirrel crouched still at the end of a snow-padded canopy. His tail hung interrogative. His eyes looked open but didn't stir. I thought, the hawthorn is dreaming. Fairies dusting the thorned door from the other side. I'll say a prayer, my landlord texted back. Be up with a saw for surgery. Very old. You are over 80 now, though no one knows the year you were born. The hands that fill the stone house with the smell of butter tea. I don't want to die, you said mid-prayer one night owing anyone anything. My landlord arrived with his toy poodle and poor social skills. Just a bigweed, he spat and put the electric saw to work. From the window, I watched him hew off the tree limb by limb, haul them into a mound on the snow by the apricot. I thought, a small monument of loss. I thought, bonfire. One morning, I'll wake up and you won't be here. If with every sip I remember your hands, what will we owe each other? After the sun opened the sky and the branches began dripping, I went for a walk. The squirrel was gone. Where the tree broke, no rings, a toothed wound. The barren bark of what remained sent forth some green. Thank you. I was just checking if time for one more. It looks like I might have. And I'll read a short one. And actually, it's the last poem in the collection. And thank you again for FAWC and FAWC family for having me. Thank you all for being here. And before I read this poem, I do want to share this kind of ridiculous anecdote. When I was here for the summer scholarship, I read a different poem on the scholars or the participants' night, and afterwards someone came up to me and said, "You know, that's the best thing I heard all night yesterday." And I said, "Thank you," and all. And then he said, "I feel like one day you'll be big." And then he said, "Maybe I should take your number or something." And I didn't know what to say, so I just waited, and then he just walked away. So that's my FAWC story. This last poem is also about my mother tongue. And thank you all. The Last Himalayan Beekeeper. Let it be said, Amma was the last Himalayan beekeeper. When she harvested honey barehanded in the stone house we lived in, she took not juniper smoke but song to the hive. A home is one blossom and 1,000 stings. The bees flew into her oiled black hair, and when she combed it, down fell rhododendrons. Let it be said, not a single bee stung her. The summer before I left home, she fed me raw honey from her palm every night. In the dark, I learned to hold bees in my throat, one for every ancestor. Let it be said, not a single bee died. Now, every time I misremember the word of the horse ghost, I get stung in the windpipe. With each perished bee, Amma becomes more smoke. Let it be said, if you plunge your hand into an abandoned hive, you'll still get stung. At night, Amma plucks stingers from my tongue with her nails. Each barb she binds to her lock, and her crown grows more thorn than rhododendron. Let me sky bury them, Amma, while they're still alive. No, Tamang, she opens the wounds with crushed hooves. Your mouth is our last hive.
Thank you, Samyak. That was beautiful. I'd now like to invite our second-year Visual Arts Fellow, Anne Rogers, who will introduce our second and final guest of the evening.
Thank you, Terry. Tonight, I have the pleasure of introducing Kristy Hughes, whose abstracted sculptures and collaged paintings convey a sense of awe Describing her practice, she says, "It always starts with the simple act of paying attention." Through this act of paying attention, Hughes incorporates the color of a fluorescent sky, a flower, or a frog into her work. Hughes speaks of taking joy, laughter, and silliness seriously and using them as devices for elevation. Before reading anything about it, when I look at her work, this reverence for delight and her bent toward awe is clear. In an interview with the Provincetown Art Association and Museum, while describing her work titled Fancy Lady, she says, "It has a leg that goes down to the ground. It decided that it needed to touch the floor." In this instance, Hughes talks about her work as though the art itself was making decisions, constructing itself, rather than Kristy, the artist, at the helm. What struck me about this comment is that when I look at Kristy's work, her sculptures and paintings do appear to me as though they have their own life force, their own system of creating. In other words, when Kristy says of her work that it decided, I believe her, and that seems correct. I consider these moments of suspended belief to be a gift, opening me, the viewer, up to a space of hopefulness and to receiving meaning that seems to exist on another plane, a place of uninhibited vibrance. Hughes has been supported by such fellowships as NXTHVN, the Vermont Studio Center, and here at the Fine Arts Work Center as a 2022-2023 Visual Arts Fellow. Additionally, she has completed residencies at the Golden Foundation, the studios at MASS MoCA, Hambidge Center for Creative Arts and Sciences, and Residency Unlimited in Brooklyn, New York, among others. In 2024, she was nominated for a Joan Mitchell Fellowship, and in 2025 for a Rema Hort Mann Emerging Artist Grant. She has exhibited extensively, and some recent venues have included James Cohen Gallery, Good Child Gallery in New Orleans, the Sculpture Center in Cleveland, Knisnik Gallery at Brandeis University, to name a few. Hughes has been featured in such publications as Art Spiel, Shenandoah, Make Magazine, and New American Paintings. Kristy lives in New Haven, Connecticut, where she is working on her first public outdoor sculpture to be installed at the Aldrich Museum of Contemporary Art. Hughes earned an MFA in printmaking from Indiana University and an MA and BA in studio art from Eastern Illinois University. Please join me in welcoming Kristy Hughes.
Hi, everyone. Let's see. Thank you. That they match one of the pieces. Yeah. Thank you so much for that introduction. I didn't watch the Pam video. I knew it was being published, but I was too scared to watch it, and I'm glad that it was okay, maybe. Thank you all for coming tonight, and thanks for the invitation to come back to FAWC. It's such a gift to be back in this space. Yeah, it feels like I was driving in yesterday, and I was like, I wonder what will it feel like to be back in this, like the magic of what FAWC holds. Like, how do I go back into that bubble? And it felt so normal. Like I'm like, oh yeah, I'm here. This is normal. I should go to my studio at 5 and like go up to Brewster and like, so I don't know, it feels like coming back home, and it's such a gift to have spaces like that in your life and people that make those homes possible. Okay. So I'm gonna talk about, I think how I decided to like present my work tonight is to share the questions that I have, and the way that I approach art making is is through my questioning, and I make objects to kind of learn from those objects, and they do feel like they make themselves, and then I learn from them, and then I see myself and I see the world through the things that I can make. And I also collect clues, and what I mean by that is I do a lot of reading, and I wish I was a poet, and a lot of poetry. A lot of poetry are clues to like, how do I think and approach the world in a different way? And so I collect my clues and I make my work to answer and circle around a lot of the questions that I have as I live this life. So yeah, so here we go. Here's my life questions for you all. I know. Please submit your answers afterwards. But before I get started, I'm gonna share three of my clues, which I'll stop saying clues, but the other day I was like, these are my clues to my life. But they're really the foundation of, I keep coming back to these writers and this information and technology of how to be in the world. So Octavia E. Butler, this is the beginning of Parable of the Sower. All that you touch, you change. All that you change changes you. The only lasting truth is change. God is change. And so this idea of agency and that we can work with change, and we can work with change, right? So that is just a beautiful, hopeful idea. Sontag, of course, the queen. Do stuff, be clinched, curious, not waiting for inspiration, shove, or our society's kiss on your forehead. Pay attention. It's all about paying attention. Attention is vitality. It connects you with others. It makes you eager. Stay eager. And then Adrienne Rich, poetry can break isolation, show us to ourselves when we are outlawed or made invisible, remind us of beauty where no beauty seems possible, remind us of kinship where all is represented as separation. So with that in mind, I want to share this photo of me with you all. If you take home nothing, let it be this. Just like delete this from your mind. But whenever you're going through life and you're like, I'm really good at making other people not think that I am falling apart inside, like really good at masking or. But I found this photo and I was like, ooh, that's the truth. So this was taken like 5 years ago or something like that. And I like this, obviously, I hope it's obvious, this is not my truck, but but I was like, why is a truck this big? And so I stood next to it and I was like, oh God, just, take a photo of me in this truck. And I zoomed in on my face. It was like a year later, I refound this, and I was like, that says a lot, But that captures kind of what the first, why I make art, especially the work that I'm making right now, is to answer this question of how to have agency, how to not be invisible, what does it mean to take up space, and this is how I have felt a lot of my life, right? Of I'm really good at being good and invisible and small. And that comes from a lot of different things, right? The way that I was brought up in a very religious environment, so I'm good at being good. I know that the invisibility of poverty, different things in our lives that where we just feel like we are hiding, or that we want to say something but we can't speak it. And so knowing Sontag and Octavia Butler, Adrienne Rich, and it's okay, if these are the clues of how to figure something out, what can I do? How can I learn from my work to become visible, to have agency? And right before I was making sculpture, I have a printmaking background. Actually, I talked to the chair of my department in undergrad and was like, I'm a printmaker, I don't need to take sculpture. And he was like, all right. So I never took the class. I never took sculpture. I was like, I don't need to know that. And I did, so whoops. But before I started making sculpture, I've been making sculpture for 5 years now, but I was making these collage paintings, and I was trying to like just pay attention and slow down and like letting the environment, things I noticed really feed into the work. So I found this, just to give you an example, I found this yellow stick in the ditch, and I brought it in and I painted yellow, like Irish Spring soap, which my husband Sean, who is watching on the stream, loves Irish Spring, which is a problem, but you know, like, but the color is really good, right? Like, so the green is really good. So the green is in there. So it was like I, you know, got that from the bathroom, and I was like, this green is good. And I walked past these like orange flags, and I put the orange flags in the piece. And so it was just like, I was like, okay, lead me, Sontag, to the truth. Like, pay attention, and like, how could I learn to be in the world in a way that I really want to be in the world? And so I started to like try to really notice what I was noticing, and to let that feed what I was making in hopes, like desperation of like to be able to learn from what I'm making as I'm trying to pay attention to what I'm doing and being in the world. And so I had this idea of like, if I feel so small and I don't know how to take up space, but I know how to make things, right? It's like that tactility, my hands know things that the rest of my body doesn't necessarily know yet. So maybe I can make something and it could teach me. And so I started to think about like small equals large, and to build and let the work lead me. And so I was making all these little collages and blowing them up, trying to figure out how to make sculpture. So I would make a collage, and it was so like analog. It was like, make it and stand it, you know, in 3 dimensions. You're like, how does this lean together? And just like really learning how to build and how to like physically take up space, and to be unapologetic about things that were a little bit awkward, or that looked like they wanted to fall over, or that like shouldn't really work, but they did work, and to not apologize for the work. And so through this making and reading and learning, unlearning and relearning, and the things that we do, right, like in our lives as we become different humans, there was so many thank yous I needed to give, and it was like to these people who have literally saved my life. Octavia Butler is one of them, so Octavia knows this is for her. This was a monument of thanks to Octavia. Bell hooks, I made this right after she passed away. I was going to the greenhouse a lot during that winter, and would walk past this plant that week that she died, and so I made this for her. Thank you to change. Like our capacity to change is so beautiful, that we can work with change, and we don't have to be, we can become, you know, we can evolve. And so Adrienne Marie Brown is another person who's really important in my work, and she has this beautiful book called Emergent Strategy, Shaping Change, Changing Worlds, and she talks about how this idea of emergence is systems, like big systems happen because of small interactions, right? So small is actually what matters. And I need more water. I am just really can't talk anymore. All right, I teach. This is like a normal thing, but not tonight. Okay. I pass out when you just keep going. No, I won't. I have more water down there. But anyway, Adrienne Marie Brown. So like thinking about like, okay, how do I reframe the smallness? Like actually maybe what we pay attention to grows, right? Small is how something beautiful and large like actually becomes. And so I started to like let myself take 2-3 months to make something that was just about a bug, and you know, like the audacity of making this sculpture for a bug, or this RV that I passed that has such good color scheme. And really, again, noticing what I noticed. So this is just like a couple of images from my noticings, and recently I've been printing them out and having them in my studio Really almost, again, like they're almost like clues of how, what I see in the world, and what colors do I see, or what shapes am I drawn to, or what textures. I was born in Texas and grew up in New Mexico and also the Midwest. And so New Mexico sky is home, is another home to me. Like the horizon and the openness. So going back to Clayton, New Mexico is where my grandparents lived. That's really important to my work, and some of those colors and just things around us, things that we grow. The colors of the world are just like bonkers, right? Like how? I don't know. But this noticing became this devotion, or like I said, I grew up in a really religious environment. Like, I know prayer, I know altars, I know that language very well, and kind of reclaiming that language to like the devotion of what I'm doing now. So the stripes is devotion, the time is devotion, this like, that it's okay to take the time to notice. And then I also, like, I make abstract sculptures, right? So it's always I'm always curious about what art does to us, and how it can change us, and also like what does it hold, and what can abstraction do too. So like you make this abstract thing, but really what does that hold? And how can I be absolutely straightforward with the work, but also be abstract with the work, and just kind of playing with that line of like, this is about my whole life, but you're like, it's just colorful, you know? So like, and it's both of those things, right? So these were some of the things that when I was here at FAWC a few years ago, I have collected rocks my entire life, have a really good rock collection. But like the rocks and just like the things, the little bits and pieces I've collected here started to finally make their way actually into the work itself. And I started to embed those into the pieces. Yeah, so the work itself is holding the things that I'm noticing. And building my piles, the piles that I create are literally going back into the work. And they become, that's kind of when again, like the things that I'm noticing becomes like this physical altar back into the piece itself. And thinking about like what does abstraction hold, I like to kind of explain how like this piece as an example, and like what is home, and how we I guess I'll talk about me instead of we, but my own experience like of trying to like learn and relearn, and like running away from home, but then you come back and you're like, wait, I am still the same person. Like, who am I? I'm the same, you know, but I thought I was different, right? Like all these things of like, what is home, or coming back to. And so I was thinking a lot about like, where is my home? Who am I? All those questions. And the last time I saw my grandfather, he died during COVID, and last time I saw him was in 2018, and this is a picture of their house. So in the back is the house, and he would build his casitas. That he didn't know that we called him that, but he would collect metal and just things he found, and would build these like lean-to shacks essentially. And he's really proud of them. And he didn't speak much English. I don't speak much Spanish, so we never really spoke that much during my life. But last time I saw him, he showed me into one of his casitas, and I walked into it, and it was like I was like walking into one of my collages. It was wild. It was like all this piecemealed wood and planks and different colors, and put together in this haphazard way, but it stood up, and it was just a beautiful thing to walk in and to be like, oh, we speak the same language of making. And he was really proud of his pink Vespa that he had in and so that's the same pink in this piece. So I made this piece for him actually while I was here at FAWC. So thinking about like, that's what abstraction can hold, right? That's what goes into the work, and how the language of art can like resonate through your body, through generations, even if it's not that apparent right away. It's such a beautiful thing. Every time, just full cotton mouth. Wow. Okay. And then, again, thinking about home, Maya Angelou has this quote. She says, "But the truth is you can never leave home. You take it with you. It's under your fingernails. It's in the hair follicles. It's in the way you smile. It's in the ride of your hips, in the passage of your breasts. It's all there no matter where you go. Home is between your teeth." And so I made this piece. I was living in Burlington, Vermont. I was teaching at University of Vermont. And I found this piece of wood on a hike as it is. It was like somebody had carved into it already. And I found that, and I made this little home for it. And it's based on like Clayton, New Mexico architecture and the Southwest colors of the sky, and kind of like this idea of like wherever I am, I'm gonna build this home, and also like honor things in my past, but look to the future. And you know, we can make what home is going to be. And that kind of going from the past to the future leads me to my other clue. Anything for a laugh to myself. Like my about this Tracy Fouad is a poet that also went to FAWC and has taught here too. But she has this beautiful book called Portals, and this is an excerpt from Radicality. She says, "I believe in circles, in the potency of future, in holes between places and times. I know nothing wholly and will not. I didn't know where I came from, but knew I would know its pitch and tenor when I heard it, and I hear it. We need to think about things a little more radically. When the self finally appears, don't turn the self away." I know, isn't it so good? So I've been making a lot of circles and portals in the world. This has been like the year of portals. I made this at the very beginning of this year in January, and I'm working on another portal right now that will be installed in 2 weeks at the Aldridge Museum. And thinking about when does a circle become a portal, and how do we shape change, right? We have agency to shift and look and notice and see the world differently, and then act differently in the world. And I think that's such a beautiful way, that's just like such a beautiful seed of hope. And so portals is kind of going, I've been seeding portals. This one, it lives in New York right now, living a fancy life at One Vanderbilt. I know, it's so fancy. But I buried within these portals too, I bury notes and poems and prayers within the layers of these. And so those are like in the world, holding those seeds. Thinking about when does a circle become a portal, and what is like this the shape of a circle too is like a shape of care, of holding. And this was made for the New Mexico sky. This is called Sky Portal. And the way that I make my work is like I find bark, I find things in the world, right? Like I look and walk and notice and pick things up. And I found this beautiful piece of bark that is like such a good shape. So I pinned that on my wall, and it was the shape and the shadow were just like delicious. And so I made the piece to mimic that shape, and then the things I was reading and writing, I buried those inside of the shape as I was making them. And then I make handmade paper pulp from trash that I collect around my neighborhood or wherever I am, and make pulp and then coat the whole thing with the pulp. So as I make the work, it holds my literal surroundings, it holds the things I'm reading, and holds the ideas, the questions, that I'm having as I make it. I'm also kind of wondering, like, what are other ways to notice? And so we notice with our eyes, what like other senses that we use. And so I made this piece called Acoustic Mirror, and you put your head in it, and you can hear like the ways, like things that we notice, we can hear, like thinking about, like if we quiet all the way down, like how do we know things with our body? I'm really curious about that, those different ways that we have a knowing of something. And this is based off of a real life acoustic mirror. And this was the invention right before radar. And so like it could hear ships coming and let folks know what was happening. But just even the shape of that is so gorgeous. Yeah, thinking about other ways to pay attention. And I've been really trying to reclaim joy. And I always like people, my work is very colorful, right? And it makes me laugh because I always I'm an easygoing person, and I'm not. I'm really stressed out all the time. But in my studio, I am though. Like that's the place that is, the studio and making is like the most joyful, beautiful thing about my life, right? And so I can leave the world and also understand a new world when I'm making. And so we grow up learning what joy is, or learning a prescribed way of what other people think that joy is. And I've been really trying to understand what is joy to me. And like, it's okay to be happy, or it's okay to just for something to be delicious or to enjoy something and not to have guilt from that. And so I've been thinking about how do I reclaim joy, and what does joy look like in terms of shape and color and texture, and how to be silly. Like I'm dead serious about joy, and I really am. I start crying. I'm like, you guys, this is a pulpit. I could preach here. So, but honestly, there's without joy, what is there? Right? There's not, without hope and joy, how do we imagine a better future? How do we be in the world? So really is a serious matter. It really is. So if you don't believe me, ask Ross Gay. He has a few books about joy, a lot of amazing books, but Inciting Joy is one of my favorite ones, and he talks about joy in this way. He says, joy is an ember for our precursor to wild and unpredictable and transgressive and unboundaried solidarity. Joy emerging from our common sorrow, which does not necessarily mean we have the same sorrows, but that we, in common sorrow, might draw us together. It might depolarize us and deatomize us enough that we can consider what in common we love. And I really love this idea of, this naming of joy, of not just wow, your shoes are really cool, which they are. No, but it's I bought the shoes and I was like, cool, it literally matches one of my paintings. This is fun. And then, you go about your day. That's not what I mean by joy, or what I'm interested in, the type of joy I'm interested in naming. It's more of in line of care and community, and I have sorrow, you have sorrow, and how can we hold each other through that together? That's what, humanness, the humanity that is in all of us, is what the beauty of life is. And that's kind of the seed of joy that I'm really trying to circle around. This is the one that matches my shoes towards the tilt. And yeah, so I think, again, this embarrassment or the awkwardness when something doesn't really work out, but it does, and kind of leaning into the till is, I made that piece kind of thinking about what does it mean to be embarrassed and to lean into embarrassment or vulnerability. And it's hard to see in this image, but the front, the tan front part is the raw paper pulp that I made, that I collected from all the trash from my neighborhood. So it's so beautiful, the blue and pink speckles that were from cigarette cartons, or just the things I collected and remade into this pulp. So I let that be. And I was really lucky to see Christina Sharp give a reading last year, and she read from an essay that she was working on called What Could a Vessel Be? And this idea of kind of thinking through different meanings of vessel. And of course, she started with a slave ship as a vessel, right? This but also people as vessel. Is vessel cruelty? Vessel is a mind. Our body's a vessel. And then it's like thinking about, you know, what are different things that vessels could be? When does a portal become a vessel? When does portal become care? If I'm a vessel, what kind of vessel do I want to be? And how do we choose, like what kind of vessel do we choose to be, is kind of what I was thinking when I was hearing her talk. And so this piece, Holding Change, When Does a Portal Become a Vessel, was kind of asking that question when I made it. And I put this in just because just to show you the process of making the work itself. So I started with this like wire circle, and from there just kind of kept building off that circle. But in the piece, like you can stand inside of it, and there's a shelf, and you can look through, and it almost becomes this home that you can live inside. But yeah, really curious about holding and care and what. Good job. Yeah. And yeah, like how does a circle become a portal, become a vessel, become care, become hope? What does joy actually look like? And when I don't have questions that I'm really circling around, I come back to attention and noticing and like collecting more clues. And this is Molly, was a student I had who is now a friend. And she had this shirt that is so amazing. This is her shirt. And she would wear it like, I wish more often, but like, you know, every couple weeks she would wear it. And it would just like made me so happy when she came to class and she had the shirt on. And so I made this piece about her shirt because I missed, you know, just like, you know, you miss your students, you miss people that you love, and like things or moments and different, when I don't really know what my work is about, right? It's like, what are you doing? I don't know. I don't know what questions to ask. I go back to like, what are the things I love? And how can I just dig further into that? And so I made this piece about Molly's shirt, about like different stripes and devotion and textures and just like form itself, thinking about coming to the studio as a daily devotion, or not even just studio, but like noticing or writing or reading the things that we do that become like prayers, and smaller pieces just to figure out texture and form. I did the Golden Residency over the summer, and so this is like just really digging into all the different things that paint can do, and just like different textures, and you know, hoping that would lead me to a new place. Octavia Butler, again, I wanted to share a couple of these photos from her notes on her writing, like from her own journals. And she was like audacious in her goals. She wrote down all the things that she wanted to do. She was working different jobs and writing, and she did them, right? And it's like she has this line, "So be it, see to it." And I love also tell stories filled with facts, make people touch and taste and know, make people feel. And this audacity to hope or to like go towards something, even though you may not ever see that end point, is so beautiful to me. So I've been thinking about like, so be it, see to it. What are we gonna name and hope for and build? And what do we actually want this world to be? How do we want our lives to be, our relationships to be? And how can that be delicious? And how can that feel? What are the textures of that and the colors of that? And so those are kind of questions that they sound kind of funny to like, what are the textures of our future, like, you know, of deliciousness and hope? What does that mean? But that's kind of what I'm asking myself right now. And how do we practice hope? And how hope is not just like, okay, I had a good day, so I'm hopeful, but like, how do we have hope whenever we have a really horrible day, or when the world is like it is, or, you know, and we like see all the things on our phone and the news. But also, if we don't imagine a better future, that future will never be possible, right? So that is why hope is so important and why joy is so important, because we're like in an imagination battle, and it's like we have to have the audacity to see things differently and shift our perspective, and then like work with change to build something that we can imagine. So I want to end with this last quote by Adrienne Marie Brown, but I'm going to get one more drink of water because I want to do it justice. Okay, so this is an excerpt from Ode to the Caregiver. She says, "We think the future is a landscape of our terror, but mostly it's giving care in conditions of abundance or wormholes of scarcity. You think you have to be brave, but the request is just care, enough to act, enough to change." So thank you very much, and thanks. I'll go back to that. Okay. The end. Yay. Thanks, everyone. Wait, should I stay up here? Yes. Okay.
Thank you, Kristy, for inviting us into your home of questions. That was inspiring. Thank you. We see you. I'd now like to invite the audience to ask questions. If there are any questions out there, we've got some mics that'll be moving around the room. So anyone have any questions for our audience, for our guests?
Oh, thanks. Oh, that's so sweet. Thanks.
There's a question up in the front. Okay.
Hello. Thank you.
Nice.
That was both great. Thank you so much. This is for Kristy. So you were talking a little bit about your definition of joy, and I was wondering if you could explicate more on your definition of attentiveness, or like paying attention. And what do you find, like, there's definitely through your photos, I saw some through lines, but if you want to just talk more about that, that'd be great.
Thanks. That's the hardest question. Okay. No, but I ask myself this a lot because, okay, so you know how in therapy they're like, be mindful, pay attention. I'm like, I'm really good at that. But then you're like, I'm not good at that at all. This idea of like this practice of noticing, I think it comes back to practice. I think that could be a through line. Especially, let me try to, I wish I was a poet because I could name the thing. But you know those moments in life that like are really normal, and you're just like talking to your friends, or you're in a grocery store and you like see a composition and you're like, life is like, that's beautiful. That thing that just happened is like the gorgeousness of life. And that attention to that normalness, but like that, the naming of just a beauty, I think that's what I'm trying to get after. And that is not enough to sustain. It is enough to sustain a life, right? It's like those moments are so beautiful, but it's like also there's sorrow, and also I'm tired, and also all the things. Like, but we're buoyed by those moments of connection, and I think like with the attentiveness, I think that I'm trying to find those like delicious connections of what it means to be a human. That is that's like the biggest question in the world, right? On being with Kristy Tippett, like what does it mean to be human? But I think it's like, I don't know if I'm actually answering your question, because I think I don't know the answer all the way, but those human delicious moments that should it make a life beautiful, you know, but they do. I think those are kind of what I'm after. Yeah, thanks for at least for nodding. I don't know. Yeah, I'm trying to figure it out. TBD. Yeah.
This, what you just asked made me think this. When you talk about attentiveness, and also in your work, do you find that, you know, with the, coming off of what you just asked, do you find in your practice of attentiveness and in how you hear with your heart, you hear the mother tongue, when you take time as the artist or the practitioner to be on holiday, to be in a restful place away from everything, how do you shut that off? Are you more attentive? Do you find yourself more open and responsive when you're in the everyday situations, and as opposed to when you go to, I don't know, Vermont, or when you go to Cabo? Are you hearing the same things, or do you have to, when you shut down to rejuvenate and replenish, shut it all down, are you still hearing? Are you bombarded with the like can you stop that flow? Or does it come from a place where you have to set aside a time, a space for that to occur?
That's a good question. I think that reminds me of a couple things of the practice of that, of like making, like I'll at least like read every day, or, you know, like I'm like feeding myself with the things I know that give me that, carving out that space. And then I can go back into the world. I feel like it's like I need to be fed, like coming to FAWC, or like listening to readings, or like going on a walk where I have like, okay, I have 10 minutes. What, like, let's look at the colors, right? Like, I've created a practice of noticing what I'm noticing. And that doesn't, it's not like that changes my whole life and I'm just like, the world's great, right? But I think that those little moments like add up. But yeah, but also you're right. It's like when you take, like driving back in to P-Town, I was like, I could feel my body be like, oh yeah, this is what it feels like to, like, you know, be present. But then I'm fed by this, and then I'll go back in the world and do all the things, and but then like making sure to feed myself and like carving out that time to be fed.
Oh, okay, too loud. You can hear me, okay. It sounds like what you're asking is how do you, in my case, how do you stop being a poet, right? Like when can the poet be on a vacation, right? So, and stop being a poet. You know, for me, I think it's both the blessing and curse in a way, right? Because, you know, today I was walking on the beach and I was like just loving it, living back memories, watching the ripples, and then at some point, almost subconsciously, I'm thinking, is there a poem there? Is there a line? Is there music, right? But I think over time, they are not mutually exclusive, as in like I can experience the thing, and simultaneously also, I think that the poet in me is also processing the thing without completely losing the joy of the thing, right? One blessing of being a poet is that I can, in a way, sort of relive that moment, especially while I'm writing a poem. When I'm really in the middle of a poem, in a way that subject matter really takes over me. Like I sort of have to, in a way, give completely myself to the poem, right? Like I have a poem about teacups for my mom, and I was like, and I was making tea and drinking it, like, you know, like that was part of the poetry, right? So I don't know if I'm answering your question, but you know, I don't think they have to be like right. I don't think being a poet necessarily gets in the way of my vacationing in P-Town. um, but it is a tricky business. Yeah. Right, because right, like someone says something beautiful, like syntax or phrase, right? Like just someone was telling me a phrase I forgot, and then I was like, oh, that's you know, there's poetry there, right? And then suddenly I can be in the poetry zone and not attentive to the real time, which is something that comes with practice, right? And in a way, poetry is that, right? It has to be, for me, has to be always in real time and timeless. And the ongoingness is the new sort of idea, right? Like, in a way that has no ending or beginning and has been happening all the time, right? And perhaps attention is one of those things, right? Because I think we're born with like being very attentive. I mean, or maybe it's just my experience, but I remember like looking at a new thing and then completely being consumed by it as though there's like nothing else out there, right? Like, and sometimes I try to like recreate that experience and I can't, but like I think that's partly what poetry gives me, that while writing the poem, I am completely devoted to that topic, that language, that emotion.
All right, we've got questions up in the front. We'll go over here.
Mine is very related, and in fact, I hesitated to repeat it, but it is kind of an opposite. It's less about maybe the vacation from your brain doing your art, more you both have very observational, seems to me very observational skills.
Thank you.
How do you preserve your attention? I think and I'm speaking for myself, we all struggle with attention spans these days, social media and phones and the rest of it. How do you achieve discipline with your being able to open yourself up and be loose enough to observe adequately with all the attention grabbing things we have around us these days? Do you have a practice? Is it daily? Is it weekly? How do you force yourself or make yourself do it?
I'm going to completely disappoint you by saying I am like one of the most undisciplined poets that I know. I don't have a set schedule, set routine in terms of writing. But what I've also come to sort of trust myself is that when there's really something worth telling, the story will tell itself through me. Like, of course, like, you know, especially when you're on a book tour, like social media, you're making posts, seeing who is commenting what, right? But I think at some point, something truly worthy happens, then in that moment, everything else kind of like disappears for me. It may not be long, but I trust that happens. And I don't have a practice for that. I think the closest thing to that is writing poetry itself, right? Reading other poems and just being lost in the music, in the complexity of thoughts and emotions and these mysteries, right? And then that sometimes opens things that were not possible before. Right? So I don't have a pragmatic answer for you, but yeah.
Let's see. Whenever I go into my studio, I don't know when this started to become a thing, but it's like anything is possible, and I don't question anything. And it's like that. I feel like Octavia Butler, like So Be It, See to It. It's like the audacity that I could do anything, and and it's embarrassing. It's like really is. Like, I've done this practice of like writing down like what are the goals that you're like, you can't say this out loud because people would be like, oh honey, you should, like, really, like, you know, like that's not possible for you. But like but I let the possibilities be possible in that space. It's like almost a sacred. I'm really good at having faith in a thing, right? So like I grew up knowing first what like to have faith in an impossible thing, and I think that I've maintained that from that, and it's like I can believe in something that is ridiculous, and then in that space that I've created that is studio, then I will believe that it can happen, and that's when I can like zone in, or like that is a sacred space, and then outside of it, it's like forget about it. But you know, it's like normal life, and you're just like wanting to cry and stuff. But you know, like, but when I go back in, it's like okay, anything's possible. So
I have as I was hearing Kristy, I have one pragmatic answer for you. For practice, this might sound kind of like very basic, but I would say find something you love unconditionally. It doesn't matter how big or small it is, right? But completely love, right? And I think at that moment, at least for me, like attention is not even a conscious thing, because I'm so into that thing, right? So I hope that at least that helps.
We had two questions up front.
I have the mic.
Oh, hold on. One. Go ahead.
It's me. I'm the next question. Hi.
dang.
Thank you. I just wanted to say thank you both so much for presenting and for speaking. Samyak, I had a question for you out of curiosity, even in hearing you read and listening to how like lineage and place and time and inversion has found its way into your work and your writing. I'm curious, as an artist, if you and how you give yourself room for disavowal, writing so much about the dead and writing about lineage and being related to the figures that you're investigating and like writing to an offering to us, you know? And so I'm curious about maybe that push and pull relationship between you as the writer versus you as the family member. And yeah, if that's even something that you feel, you know, is something that you kind of have a dancing relationship with. I was curious if you could say more about that.
First of all, I love it. I love your line. I have the mic. So if I understand your question correctly, between being a good family member who respects the privacy and secrets and being an artist, is that okay? I think y'all probably know, but someone has said if there's a writer in a family, that's the death of the family, right? In my case, I think yes, it's something I really grappled with, especially in the sonnet sequence for my dad, right? And I do have that line: "What right do I have to spend these secrets?" Right? But I think it becomes subjective to some extent, right? In the sense that, you know, from my side, I'm completely respectful, right? I feel like I'm completely honoring him as a person and his memory and our relationship, right? And sometimes I feel like to honor that relationship and complexity, I have to be more honest than perhaps what the family member might expect of me. Right, and at the end of the day, I think that's what art is also about, right? Like to confront the, you know, unpleasant or darker sides of who we are, right? So, and you know, my father and I had a complex relationship, right? And in a way, while writing that sonnet sequence, I felt so close to him. Like in a way, perhaps closer than I've ever felt to him. So in that way, I also feel like I'm honoring him and the family, right? Now, you know, if my father from the sky disavows me as his son, like there isn't much I can do, right, except write poetry, right? But I think it really comes down to the individual, right? Like what you're comfortable with. But I think writing about anyone is writing about their complexity, right? So if we're simply thinking about like, oh, those are the good things about this family member, or that's good things about my family, then I think the art has not, art I think is still very superficial, right? I think art has to always go beyond good and bad, right? There's another level, and I think that's what art strives for.
Who has the mic? Take a question up here. Is there a mic? Oh, it's coming.
My question is also for Samyak. So you talked about your hybrid poem, and you said you've also, you feel like you're a hybrid person because you've lived multiple lives. I'm wondering if you feel like those lives are integrated with each other, and if not, if you want them to be, and if so, how you do that. And tangentially to that, I'm wondering, like when you're writing a poem about the bees in your mouth, do you feel more yourself than you felt when there were actually bees in your mouth?
Thank you for that wonderful question. First, if you're talking about like physically bees in my mouth, heaven forbid that ever happens, right? So speaking of hybridity, so my story is I was born in a village outside of Kathmandu, Nepal, where the only sign of technology in the village was my father's transistor radio, and the airplanes way high above, right? And when I was age 10, we moved to Kathmandu, the capital city, and it had all the modern facilities. And after high school, I came to the US for undergrad. So in that way, I feel like I've lived kind of so many different lives. And that's sort of like technologically in a way, but also culturally, but also linguistically, right? Also being away from family, right? Making new friends, right? Finding new families. So in a way you are, I feel like I have no home, but also many homes, right? And I think the beauty of being human is that we are constantly ever evolving, right? We have to, right? Change, right? So which means we are never the same person. I mean, the Buddhist line is you can never step into the same river twice, but also actually a friend of mine has said the same person never steps into the same river twice, right? So in that way, I think I carry many multiplicities, but I also think like in a way everyone is multiple. I think we're all, I mean, at the same time, we are a student, we are a teacher, right? We are a child, we are a parent, right? So we do have like many roles and responsibilities and personalities, right? And how, I think the beauty of being human is that all of them can coexist, right? And I think for me, poetry really allows for that multiplicity to not only embrace that, but also strengthen it, also take it farther, right? In terms of form, I'm looking at the ghazal. Even there's an Arabic form, it's very, feels like my root form, because I grew up listening to Hindi ghazals and Nepali ghazals on my father's transistor radio. And I remember some afternoons shirtless with the radio, and then dancing in the stone house and the front yard. So for me, that was the root. But then here I've learned sonnet, I've learned villanelle, right, other forms, and somehow that also feels true to me because I've spent so many years, just looking at Milton's, when I consider how my life's spent, right? So all of that, I think, formally comes together. But having said that, I think no form can completely embody who we are, and I think that's when the artist has to keep going and will keep going, right? And in terms of bees, I do remember eating the combs. That poem is actually based when I was really young in the village. We had a beehive right in the house by the wall, and there was part that you could open from the inside. And I remember my mom harvesting the honey, and then we're eating combs. Of course, there were some dead bees, unfortunately. So maybe I ate some bees, who knows?
Well, what I meant is when you're writing about how does the experience of writing about something compare to the experience of actually living it? And you kind of answered this maybe already, but like, when do you feel most yourself?
I would say sort of both, right? Like, because, actually doing the thing is physically experiencing it, but also writing a poem, you're in a way spending so much more time, right? You're thinking about not just in terms of the physicality and the material, but also through language, right? Through emotions, through form. So you're sort of, in a way, sort of experiencing the same thing, perhaps, but from kind of very different angles and in very different ways. So maybe they are sort of complementary in a way, right? But of course, for me, any sort of imagination is very much rooted in the experience to some extent, right? So there's also that, right? So, and imagination can also be sort of experience, I think, for artists, in my opinion, right? If we spend a lot of time imagining, say, bees in my mouth, that too becomes an experience, right? May not be true in terms of like scientific way, right? Like, but I think our consciousness is bigger than simply being materialistic, right? Simply the physicality.
I think we have time for one more question.
Okay, I have the mic now too. And I hope this isn't redundant because Yassine and Lauren's questions kind of touched on what I wanted to ask you. So I guess more of a craft question. When you talked about this hybrid form of the ghazal, the villanelle, the sonnet, how do you sort of balance dealing with these, the constraint of these forms and this hybrid form that you've created and the content that you are writing about that's like deeply moving and personal to you? How does that process work?
Simple answer is by failing many, many times. But about my process, I have to say, almost for all the forms in this book, they were kind of not in the form when they began. Like the sonnet sequence, none of the poems are sonnets. They actually begin as like really short poems, and at the time I was grieving my father's loss, and I really thought of them as like teardrops. And they sort of look like teardrops, even though they were justified columns, right? And at some point, I realized that these poems were more than simply about grief. This was also about exploring what it means to love someone who, for whatever reason, my father, for whatever reason, would not like say, for instance, like hug us, right? And I don't know why I guess some people are completely fine without being hugged by their dad, right? But I don't know. I was like, why did he never do that, right? So those kind of questions came up, right? So it's partly also sort of like the masculinity, right? Like in certain cultures, and I wondered, was he doing that because his culture or his parents and ancestors and society said, okay, you cannot do that, right? So as soon as that happened, I realized there's more than simply shedding tear. There's intellectual exploration going on. There are questions happening that I need to explore. And then those became longer, and they probably became like 10 lines, 12 lines, and to any poet, if you see a 12-line poem, then the floodlights start going, right? Like, oh, sonnet, right? And that's how the sonnet became, right? The poem you're referring to did start as a villanelle, But something just felt off. And I think I was just, at that point I was already working with hybridity in different forms. And I felt like, okay, here I'm talking about Icarus, but also sky burial. And I felt like I had to sort of accommodate both two different cultures and two different geographical locations and history. I had to find a form that was neither, right? Or multiple forms. And as you know, the villanelle repeats the line itself, right? Which is haunting in itself, right? And ghazal, the root is, it's a love poem, right? So that poem is in a way also a love poem to my father and fatherland, right? I think in that way sort of they all came together. But I think constraints, I think, yes, they can be terrible things, right? Like they can make you hate poetry, right? But also constraints can be beautiful things. They can open things that otherwise would not have been possible. So I think to sort of approach that limitations is not feeling like you are confined, but feeling like, I think the way my mindset was, okay, I'm in this room of this form, and I cannot escape this room, but what can I do within its boundaries? And where can I push, right? And of course, as soon as you are mixing up forms, you're already playing with multiple rooms and bringing them together, right? So it can also be a lot of fun, joy, perhaps. Did that answer your question? Yeah, thank you.
How about a round of applause for Samyak and Kristy? Just a few reminders and announcements before we segue into the next phase of the evening. Our next FAWC Friday event will take place on Friday, December 5th. We hope to see you there. In addition to Samyak's book, we also have some new FAWC merchandise, a brand new collection available in the back for sale, as well as some half-price books from our bookstore. So it's never too early to start your holiday shopping, so go check it out. Be sure to check out the activation in the print shop, Jeff Gibbons' show in the gallery, our Fellows Open Studios marked with colorful banners, Studio 1, which is on the corner as you exit the parking lot on the right, and Studios 7, 8, 10, and 12, which are located on the upper catwalk. And finally, tonight, in addition to being FAWC Friday, it's also our dear colleague and program director, David Simpson's birthday. Thank you, DJ Boom. Thanks again for coming out. Have a good night.